Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 404. Today we're going to talk about Codenames. This is a brand new game from Czech Games Edition. It just hit big time at Gen Con 2015 and should be trickling out over the fall from last thing that I read. Now this is designed by designer Vlada Kavadal, which means you have no idea how the game is actually going to work because he'll do anything ranging from a big beast of a game like Mage Knight or Through the Ages to stuff like Pictomania and Bunny Bunny Moose Moose. So you could sort of glibly classify this as a word game with some elements of spyfall, but let's jump into and take a look at how it works very quickly, and then I'll kind of come back and tell you what I think of it. So as you can tell from the cover, Codenames is kind of like the James Bond of word games. Players will play in two separate teams trying to deduce what their captain or their spy master is trying to relay to them through the process of giving hints and clues as to which words that team is responsible for. Here you can see all of the different pieces that come in the game. There's markers for each of the different teams and some grid cards. And most importantly, there's a giant stack of cards that have a word on them. These are double-sided, so there's going to be a large variety of words that are available to you. And then you're always going to take and shuffle up these words and put them into a 5x5 grid. And then each team is going to have one captain for their team, and they're going to sit together and they're going to draw one of these grid cards and put it in the little stand. And here we can see there are certain cards or words that are marked in your particular team's color. And this one, as you can see, has a sort of blue highlight kind of going around the card. That means that the blue team is first, but they're going to have to solve one more word than the red team. And each team has markers in their player color, and then there's one sort of double-sided marker that you can flip over, and in this case we'd give it to the blue team because they have one more word they have to guess, and then we'll put this in their stack. So what you're going to be doing very simply as the spy master is presenting your team with a word and a number. So I might say water 2 or trees 3, or you can even do 0 or infinity, which is more of an advanced role. But you're trying to give a hint and say, okay, there are two words associated with water. If you say water 2, so the team has to go ahead and guess and try to mark, and then actually you physically touch the word with your finger, because there's going to be a lot of discussion going back and forth. You don't want to sort of say, is that your final answer, and go back and forth. So the game rules are very clear and says you must actually touch a card, and that's confirming your guess. Now, of course, you're trying to guess the cards that are marked in your particular color. So taking a look back at the grid card, we can see, of course, we have some blue cards that we want to mark. And there's one there sort of in the upper left, the second from the left-hand side in the top row. And if you look at the bottom of the card here, there's a black X, and this is the assassin. So if anybody guesses either team this word, then you're going to mark it with the assassin, and then that team immediately is going to lose the game. But let's say I gave the clue of dark 2 in this case. So there's two words that I'm thinking of, and here we take a look at the word forest, which is in the upper left-hand corner, second from the left that I was shown before. A forest could be very dark. And then we can also see here another blue word, which was shadow. So hopefully my team would guess these, and they wouldn't actually guess either the other team's word, the assassin, or one of the blank words. So let's say they went ahead and pointed to forest. Then we go ahead and mark that with one of our blue markers. We've now scored 1 point, and we're that much closer to victory. If it had been a red word, even though it's our turn, we'd still mark it with red, and red would get a point because of our mistake. If it was nobody's word, you go ahead and mark it with one of these sort of gray nondescript markers, and of course the assassin will instantly lose the game for that team. So that's pretty much how you play the game. We go back and forth, blue team gives a clue and a number, and then red team goes, and we go back and forth till one side covers up all of their words or picks the assassin and loses. Now there's one extra rule that is very key actually. So let's say earlier in the game I gave a clue of water 2, and then my team had only gotten one of those right. And so we still know there's one that's related to water out there that we couldn't quite figure out. Then on a later turn, let's say I did the dark 2, and they got them both right. They got forest and shadow. You can always kind of go one above the number, in this case 2, and you can think back, okay, well we missed that water one earlier, and then now we can try to go get our sort of +1 and guess that. Now you can also name 0 and affinity, if you get really behind, and that's really the cool part of the game, I think, is as each team is scoring, you start to get sort of pushing your luck with whatever word that you can try to get out there. So if we're like 3 behind, the blue team's doing awesome, then you can get kind of loosey-goosey and sort of just say, I don't know, I'm just picking a random, like cat 6 or something, or cat infinity, and they really try to guess and they kind of go for it. And it's a nice sort of explosion at the end of just a flurry of guesses and incorrect guesses and all that stuff. So it does add to kind of the excitement of the game. And that's kind of where I come down on this, why it's so awesome, is to me, this was the game of Gen Con 2015. I mean, it may not win the game of the year, and it may not be the best game to actually come out of Gen Con, but as far as games that people were playing, that I was playing, and people were talking about, everybody was talking about Codenames and how fun it was. And the thing that I like about it, because it gives you and sort of engages in your sort of gamer sense, sort of the strategic clue giving and all that kind of stuff, and trying to be real sort of foxy with that, and just that whole aspect of it. But it can blow up into a big party game. So it can work with like a 4-player where it's one captain on each side, and then they each have just one teammate. But I played it with 14 total people a couple of times, and so it was 1 and 6 for each team. And it was great because it was just everybody was involved. You could have different ages and different folks from everywhere trying to participate and then engage in like a good conversation. I mean, the only thing I would say is like when you get that big, it kind of bogs the game down a little bit because there's just so much discussion. But they have this timer in, and I think as folks get used to the game and then want to play quickly, then you can put that extra pressure on with the timer. And it is I wouldn't say it's very difficult, but it is difficult the first time you are the captain or the spy master, because you have to be very careful. You're going to be looking here at this grid of colors, and you don't want to give the other team points, and you don't want to obviously hit the assassin, and you don't want to get the blank ones, but you will maybe see, you're like, oh, I've got it. Like one example was I had, it was pumpkin and whip. And so my clue was going to be pie too. So you can have pumpkin pie, and then everybody puts whipped cream on their pie. At least a lot of people do. But I actually saw the word pie in another card. And of course you can't say any word that's visible on the board. So I was about to say, oh no, I can't do that. And so just that kind of example is you have to be very careful and make sure there are no other words that could be mistakenly linked to the clue that you give. So that's tricky, but it's really cool. It's thinky. But yeah, I mean, this game is awesome. It's one of the best games I've played, all year and probably ever. It's just super fun. It works in lots of different atmospheres, I think, where you can sit there and be really thinky and quiet about it with a small, you could have sort of like a date night with 2 couples and stuff like that, or you can blow it up into a huge party, like I said, with 14 people playing. And you could go even larger than that. I mean, there's a certain point where your return on investment is a little bit less if you're playing like 30 on a side or something, but anyway, it's really fun. The rules take 2 seconds to explain, and you just kind of go away from there, and it's super fun. That's all I can tell you. Okay, thanks. Bye.